Yo, what's up everybody? It's Drewberry and I'm back with another custom card video. This is our 10th one. It's unreal. Thank you so much for supporting this series. It's been a lot of fun to do. And yeah, we got the beardless Drewberry variant unlocked recently, so that's pretty neat. But anyways guys, so this past week we had the challenge of start. Any card that had in its text the keyword start. And you guys delivered some awesome submissions. I want to say right off the hop, if you didn't get selected, it's not because your card was bad, it's just because there's so many and I gotta filter through all of them. So I only get to pick a handful on these busy Sundays. So keep submitting and eventually your card will get showcased. This next week challenge is very different. Up till this point, we've only done cards with different keywords, but the most requested challenge is locations, and we're finally doing it this week. Now, they're a little bit different. I was hesitant to do this because it's not as easy as making a custom card, which you can do with the link in my description. For the locations, you're gonna have to jump into the Discord, and we have templates that Berryverse users have made to make it kind of easy for you guys. You still need some mild software editing tools, but if you just ask around, I'm sure a lot of the friends there will guide you to the right places, that it's free and easy to put this together. And if you do make a location for this week's challenge, please submit it in the weekly challenge channel, but only submit one. And if you gotta post a different one because you got a new idea, just go back and delete your old one, please. All right, let's get to this week's winners. So kicking it off in the honorable mentions is a couple of cards that are almost exactly the same but balanced a bit differently, but I wanted to put them both in because I thought it was a really cool idea. Okay, so we got Sir Dickus the Third, great name, Grasshopper, which is a 0/6. At the start of the game, jump into your opponent's hand. I like the flavor of jumping, kind of like the Mbaku into the board. This is going into your opponent's hand at the beginning. And then Kenibos, Speed Demon, a 1/2, so that Quicksilver stat line starts in your opponent's opening hand, right? So basically the exact same text but different stat line. These are both deck thinning cards because if you don't draw them, even if you did end up drawing them, they would just still go to your opponent's hand. But let's say you didn't draw them and they're still in your deck. They're going to jump out or start or whatever. At the beginning of the game, they're going to go to your opponents, and then you have less cards in your deck to draw from, and then it's going to just be that much more consistent draws, which historically has been very powerful in Snap. People run America Chavez solely for that deck thinning purpose. So I think this ability would be really, really good. So what Sir Dickus here said is that it's deck thinning at a price, because at least with Grasshopper, it's 6 power and it costs 0. So your opponent can play it very easily, get pretty good value for it at the cost of you thinning your deck and putting a card in their hand. Sometimes that's not always a benefit. See, with Speed Demon, for instance, they actually have to pay the toll to get this card out of their hand. So it's actually really clustering up their hand and it's really uncomfortable for them. Meanwhile, thinning your deck, so it's kind of a win-win. So I think maybe Speed Demon is a little bit unbalanced, maybe almost too good, but then you still have to put this card in your deck. So I have a feeling that Speed Demon is maybe a bit too good because you run some heavy combo deck and literally this just ends up being the last piece that you add in there and it would be nuts. Whereas Grasshopper, at least you're giving your opponent 6 power for that crazy swing. But regardless, I love the idea. I wanted to put Speed Demon here too because I love the idea of an opposite Quicksilver. When I first saw this, I was like, it's Quicksilver, but he starts in your opponent's hand. That makes so much sense. That's so good. That's so much better than Quicksilver, which is probably why his stats would have to be adjusted slightly. But still, great ideas from you both. I love to see it. This is another one that's kind of similar, which is why I put it on the same panel here, is HypoSoc's Stingray. I actually, a long time back, made a custom card of Stingray back before I was even doing content, so it's kind of interesting to see this. But at the start of each turn, if Stingray is in your hand or in play, put him on the bottom of your deck, and he's a 0/7. So almost impossible to play this. Pretty well the only way I can think of this actually making it to the board is if you play something like Jubilee on turn 6 and it pulls Stingray, right? Because otherwise, if he's in your hand or if he's on the board, he's gonna swim back to the deck. Now that makes it a little bit easier to consistently draw other things, right? Maybe you want to draw this early so that it ends up at the bottom and then everything else you're drawing, it's essentially like thinning your deck by 1, right? So maybe this is just a free deck thinner, but it kind of uses up a draw at some point in time, either in your opening hand or by other means like cheating out the card, maybe in a lockjaw cycle and then it swims back under. I don't know. So yeah, I thought this was pretty cool. Overall, the general theme here is like deck thinning abilities, which are really powerful in Marvel Snap since there's only 12 cards and you want to get to those combos. So it's something to look out for, but I appreciated the thought process behind all of these. Thank you. All right, and some more honorable mentions. We got Arugula's Xorn. This one was super cool. I love the artwork. It looks great in the text and everything. But at the start of each turn, give the highest cost card in your hand and cards, if there's like multiple sixes, -1 cost. That is super powerful, my dude. You got to watch out for this card, but it's offset by the fact that it costs 4 itself. So really, if you play it on curve, you're only getting the discount on 5 and 6 respectively. Now that could be some serious discounts that you got to look out for. And this doesn't have the ongoing tag, which is going to be a theme as we move forward. I have these two side by side for a reason, but where you either have it as a trigger effect or an ongoing effect. And I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer. Marvel Snap kind of has cards that could go either way, and it's kind of hard to determine between the two, and at the start of each turn could really go either way in my opinion. But he goes without it, so it can't be countered, so that is a balance change there, and it has 3 power, so it's not the greatest card to have out on the field, but the discount insane. Like, I'm sure if you just have a bunch of 5 cost stuff, or what if you even have a bunch of 5 cost stuff, you aim to just drop it two rounds, and what if you have like a bunch of 5 cost stuff and you aim to just reduce that cost on turn 5, on turn 6, then it costs 3, and then you play Silver Surfer. Holy smokes, you could get your Iron Man and whatever else to 3. Oh my gosh, and then give it a bunch of 3 power. It'd be insane. So I thought this was a really cool card. I love the idea of giving a reduction in cost to cards and seeing what happens. But then we also have Francy here with Skaar. So Skaar is ongoing. At the start of each turn, shuffle a rock into both players' deck. So this is the opposite, where now the card actually has the ongoing tag, and that can be shut down by Enchantress or Rogue or anything like that. There'd be no point in Rogue because it's a mutual effect, but regardless, it can't be countered, right? So Skaar is going to be giving a bunch of rocks to both players. Probably a very annoying card, let's be honest. Nobody likes Subterranean. This is kind of giving Subterranean vibes, or maybe it's like kind of like Korg vibes or Rock Slide vibes, because I imagine if you're just planning on putting a bunch of rocks into your opponent's deck, you're probably playing around that and you don't care if you get any in your deck. It's still going to be a hindrance, but if you're playing like something like Darkhawk, then you power, you keep putting those rocks out, I'm sure it'd be fine. And then maybe even Patriot synergies, so that when the rocks that you have are going to get buffed and the rocks that they get aren't. We got to be careful with how many rocks you can end up putting in each other's deck. I think we're like 1 or 2 cards away from it being one of the most annoying and toxic decks in Snap. But regardless, I kind of like to see it, so I wanted to put it here. I thought it stood out to me. And I like the mutual effect, and I like that it has ongoing on at the start of each turn. But lastly, check this card out, dude. This is so good. So Snailman is a 1/3. This can't start in your opening hand, guys. I love it when you create something super creative that we don't have in Marvel Snap, but is completely and utterly simple to understand. Because look at this card. It's perfect. Snailman, look at him. He's fired up. He's got his hand in the air. Bradleyrose, you crushed it. And I love that you took this ability and you put it as a negative. A lot of people want to put like a crazy ability that happens at the start of every turn, at the start of the game or something like that. You know, that's where our minds are drawn to. But you said, no, something can't happen. And it's Snailman. He's entering your hand at a snail's pace. He's that 1 cost that you can never play on 1. So he's still pretty good though. This is a great card. He has the premium stat line for a 1 cost. Maybe you want to thin your opening hand for some reason, right? Maybe you want to make sure that you get that Kazar so that when you do draw Snailman, you can buff him up. The downside is that eventually he might be a draw, and usually that's not a great feeling, drawing a 1 cost in like your turns 4, 5, 6. You probably wanted something a little bit more impactful, but maybe it rounds out the curve. I don't know. It also has an ability, so then like maybe it doesn't synergize with other things like ongoing, unrevealed. No, none of that. It's literally just like a tech option to put in your deck to like somehow navigate a specific combo, or make sure that your opening hand is that much better. But I love it. I think this could be something that would be in Marvel Snap. I don't know about Snailman, but that would be hilarious. But when I saw this, I was like, oh, this is just too good. That's great. Well done. All right, and before we get to the top 5, I have made a card this time around, as I like to do. And this time I made Zeus. I apologize, I did see a few other people making Zeus custom cards. I do this at the same time as you guys, so when I do make the card earlier on the week and I see people have already made like the same character, I'm like, oh no, it's unfortunate. But regardless, Zeus here is a 3/6, so that good stat line, thinking of like Swordmaster stat line, right? Start of each turn, so I omitted the ongoing tag specifically, randomly destroy one of your cards. So destroy synergy. Pretty simple, pretty basic. I don't think it's too confusing. And the key thing here is that Zeus can destroy himself. So it's just like if you have two cards on the field, let's say it's Zeus and Deadpool, well, it's a 50-50 on which one he destroys. He could destroy himself and it's going to suck, or he can destroy your Deadpool repeatedly and you're in a good spot. The way I imagine this is if he's on the field and you know how the Gambit comes out and a card destroys something, well, instead it'd be a lightning bolt. A lightning bolt shoots out from the sky and zaps a card and destroys it, flicks it away, if you will. So it'd be really good in destroy decks, I think. Like, you'd have to kind of navigate where this gets destroyed. It's only 3, so even if it destroys one other thing than itself, then that's all right. You do have to watch out. If you try to cheat out Death early, she could get destroyed by Zeus. So that kind of Death Wave thing isn't going to work out so easy, but it's at the start of each turn. So knowing at the start of turn 6, you can safely play whatever cards you want and they won't get destroyed. I think it's balanced because he can destroy himself. I could have put the ongoing tag so that he could be countered and that could be removed, but I almost feel like that would be a buff because then Enchanters could be run in this deck and you could remove it and then you have a premium stat line. So I feel like this way it just keeps the RNG random, keeps you on your toes. You could lose a bunch of cards or you could hit the right Deadpool on repeat. I can imagine games like Deadpool gets destroyed on turn 4, 5, and then you play him on 6 and he gets destroyed again. Another thing I thought would be funny is when they randomly generate cards, locations like X-Mansion, for instance, and Zeus comes out and starts destroying all your stuff. It's like, no, what is happening right now? Lightning bolts flying all over and zapping my cards. So I thought it'd be pretty funny, pretty cool card. But that was my submission. Let's get into the top 5. Number 5, Someguywithinternet, Wizard. All right, Wizard is a 1 cost, 1 power. Ongoing at the start of each turn, choose your draw from 2 options. I think this is sick. It'd be probably bonkers in some kind of like combo focused deck. I was thinking like Galactus I got over there. Galactus's only weakness is his inconsistency in his draws. Maybe some other stuff like Cosmo and whatever your opponent plays. But I mean, when you're piloting the deck, it's pretty much just a matter of getting the right pieces assembled. Did I get my ramp so I can cheat him out early? Did I get like Death or something to play, or Null right at the end on top of on the turn 6 for Galactus's big power swing? So I feel like if I can choose between 2 draws, I'll always end up choosing those cards that I need. And the way I thought this would work, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Someguywithinternet, but it'd be the top 2 cards on your deck. So if I looked at them and then I chose one card, the other one goes back on the top, and then I'd have 2 options and to be the same one that keeps coming up over and over and over again. I feel like that balances it out a bit. If it was shuffled again and then you got 2 more cards, you'd be able to rip through your combos like crazy. So because you keep getting that one card that you really don't want to draw, you keep putting it back, then your options are limited. So maybe eventually you do have to take that card and then see what else you can get. But I love the idea of like controlling your draws. I almost feel like maybe this should have negative power because it's that powerful of an effect and you can play it on turn 1. It would be very detrimental to this card if it had a higher cost, right? The value drops off significantly with a card like this if you can't play it sooner than like, I don't know, turn 2, turn 3. Still trying to find those pieces near the end game is still very valuable. Playing this on curve, like on turn 4, you have 3 costs, you play that, and then this, you're probably still fine. You get 2 draws that you get to kind of select. You're doing well. Also, Someguywithinternet made this little graphic here to kind of like indicate how it would look visually with the 10-second turn timer. I think that's great. Your opponent can't see it, which is also awesome. It eats into your turn, I imagine, which is totally fine. I think turns in Marvel Snap are like 30, 45 seconds. So you're doing fine for your time. So I think this makes sense. I think this could easily work. I remember I once made a choose card and people were saying that that'd be too complicated for Marvel Snap. I think a quick tap on your screen to pick which cards you want at the beginning of a turn is a pretty simple mechanic that people can figure out, right? So I think we're okay there. So very cool idea, some guy with internet. And then another combo lastly is America Chavez, because America Chavez is always your last draw. So I imagine if this says draw, right? This says draw. I'm going to draw 2 cards. I imagine the options would never have America Chavez. So you keep her at the end, and then on turn 6 she'd be one of your options or something like that. But that really makes it easier to find your combos. Anyways, it was a really thought-provoking idea. So great custom card here. Let's get on to the next one. Number 4. Mighty Igarashi's Betsy Braddock. Oh my gosh, that was a lot to say. But there we go. We got Betsy Braddock. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. She's a 2/3. Dude, the art, oh my gosh, you crushed it. At the start of the game, discount your starting hand by 2 energy, but all cards in your deck cost 1 more. So it's all in on the starting hand. I think this is probably the biggest thing here is this is an absolute massive buff to Agatha decks. Dude, it'd be insane, okay? So Agatha is always in your starting hand. She would then cost 4. Agatha always plays herself on curve. So come turn 4, she goes down. That's 14 power on turn 4. And then you do whatever else you want to do on turns 5 and 6. Insane. It would be insane. I just think it's a really cool idea to give a discount to the cards in your hand, but at a cost of the cards in your deck. So it all becomes like, what do I draw at the beginning, and can I work with this? Because my deck is basically shot. I don't need it anymore. Another thing that I am kind of interpreting here, and I could be wrong, is that if it's all cards in your deck, maybe when cards are added to your deck, like rocks or something like that, through locations or anything like that, they start to cost more. And then it's almost like a tech against cable decks or Mantis or anything like that that aims to take cards from your deck. Well, they're at a higher cost, so you don't really want those. So I was trying to think of like deck thinning options. So you could go the route of like Domino and America Chavez, even though those would be totally dead cards when you do draw them. At least they're not in your opening hand, and you can ensure maybe some of those combo pieces that you really want end up in your opening hand and get discounted. The combos would be insane, dude, insane. And at least Zabu was another combo I was thinking of that could really help, because maybe you can play him on turn 1 or not, doesn't really matter, but he helps with the discount, because if some of the cards affected in your deck became and 1 extra cost, but they're 4s, Maybe I don't know how it works exactly, but they'd have to be 3s, then they end up at 4s, and then they get discounted with Zabu to 2s. I don't know exactly, but in general, you can understand that Zabu would discount past the negative energy increase that Betsy provides in your deck. So you can kind of work around it that way. But then the combos in your hand are insane. Dude, look at the variants as well. My goodness, so good. I love the one in the middle with the shield. That is so clean. And then the inkified version as well. Amazing artwork here. And despite everything, I think that energy reduction is an insane thing in Marvel Snap, and we see it time and time again. Look at Zabu right now running rampant in the meta. But I think this one is kind of balanced. Maybe it'd be a little bit nuts. Even if you're running an Agatha deck, I mean, it's an Agatha deck, so good luck, you know what I'm saying? Sure, AI will find a way to mess it up despite getting a 14 power card out on 4. But anyways, very cool idea, Mighty Igarashi. Thank you for submitting. Let's get on to the next one. Number 3. Conor reads Spider-Man Noir. Oh man, I love Spider-Man Noir. This is such a good one. I actually just watched the Spider-Verse recently, so I'm into this. Not for the first time, by the way. Watched it many times. So Spider-Man Noir is a 2-cost, 2-power. Ongoing at the start of each turn, destroy an enemy card at this location with less power than this. You know what's very interesting here is that Shadow King up here, his original version, his original data mine before the card that we know today, that's coming out in a few weeks, he used to be destroy all other cards that have 2 or less power. It's an on reveal, it's fixed at 2, and it's a 6 cost with 4 power. So kind of different, but the general concept is similar, right? Now, is this maybe a little bit too good? Well, I'm going to argue no, okay? You're probably thinking, well, now you can just destroy your opponent's whole board, and it's just not fun because you buff this once and it's insane. But, okay, think about it this way. Like, there's locations that are going to put stuff at your opponent's location, like rocks or whatever, right? Or squirrels. Well, those are all going to get destroyed, and they probably don't care about them getting destroyed. So Spider-Man Noir is now like not really hitting those targets that you want. Also, it's ongoing tag, so it can get stolen with Rogue, or it could get disabled with Enchantress. So there's the weakness there as well. well. And you have to invest in this card. You'd have to build it up somehow to actually start hitting worthy targets, right? Now, there's a lot of cards that can do that. Hulkbuster is an easy one. Sure, you could double the power afterwards, or if you buff it in hand with Nakia, Okoye, like there's all kinds of ways that we can get Spider-Man Noir to some high power levels. But at the end of the day, he's still just destroying one card. And if you draw him by turn 4, you buff him a little bit somehow, maybe you get him out at 5 or 4, whatever it is, then you're destroying like 2 cards, and maybe those aren't priority cards for your opponent that they don't really care about. Maybe it was on reveals and the on reveal already happened, so they're like, whatever, I can lose that. So what I'm trying to say is I think this is actually okay. I don't think this would be too broken, despite it seeming like a very strong ability to destroy kind of target cards almost, right? But I love the idea of it. I love the idea of investing power into a card for a payoff to try and trump your opponent's power levels, right? If I have more power than you, then you're going to lose resources. So yeah, I thought this was a really good idea. Great job with the text here. I just wanted to frame break it for a little bit of fun, but I thought it was awesome. Thank you for submitting, my friend. Number 2, AKG's Scarlet Spider. Dude, oh my gosh, guys, if we were doing it for just art alone, if number 1 wasn't the craziest effect I've seen on like some of these custom cards ever, then my goodness, I think this would be number 1 of like all of the cards I've seen. I don't know, something about this. I'm a big Spider-Man fan, so I just love this so much. Look how good the variants look. We got a Carnage version of Scarlet Spider. We got the baby variant. Dude, we got a baby variant. I'm smashing things. And then the pixel variant looks amazing as well. I just love it. This looks straight out of Marvel Snap, like it's in the game today. And the ability is sick. And the more I think about this ability, the more I love it. So it's pretty simple. 2/4 stat line with premium stats, okay? At the start of each turn, this flips back over, okay? So here's a big buff. Right here, your card backs just got buffed like crazy because you actually are going to see them a little bit more often, okay? Okay, but getting back to reality here. Okay, so there's a good side to this and there's a bad side to this. So on the good side, I can avoid any on reveals or anything like that, right, with this card. So Destroyer coming out and destroying all the things, Hazmat giving out negative energy, right? That could be on your team. You could be doing like a Luke Cage negative power thing, and then if you don't draw a Luke Cage, well, at least Scarlet Spider is never going to get hit by that negative power. You can still dispense that across the board. Then there's other things like Gambit, like your opponent plays a Gambit combo and it's never going to hit Scarlet Spider because he can't be seen. Like when cards are not revealed, they're face down, they can't be interacted with other than like Galactus can destroy them. And then Dagger can pick up the power when she moves to a location. Like there's a few nuances, but for the most part, they can't be targeted. So I thought that was really cool. He becomes like hidden. He's hidden on the board now all of a sudden. And then on top of that, if there's any ongoing effects, you're still going to get the value from that because Scarlet Spider will flip back over at the start of each turn. And for further clarification, AKG actually had this in the text, but I thought maybe sometimes, there's things in Snap they don't explain in the card, and then as you just play the game, you start to realize it. So I thought maybe keep this text simple, but he did put this, which is reveals again after all other cards have revealed, right? So you can just imagine that it's the last one to flip back over at the end of the turn. Anyways, I was just in love with the look of this card, but then when I really started thinking of ability, when I really started thinking about the combos and how viable and realistic this could be in Marvel Snap, I was like, geez, this needs a top spot. So we got number 2, but number 1 is pretty insane. So let's get to it. Number 1, Franz, He Who Remains. Dude, this is a card. This is a card that literally makes its own archetypes in Marvel Snap. It just takes over. You start having He Who Remains decks. That's what happens when you have this type of card. I don't know if it's balanced, but I think it is. So 0/3, okay? 0/3, so pretty good value, I suppose. At the start of the game, set your energy to 6. Each turn, instead of gaining 1 energy, you lose 1 energy. So you're just Benjamin buttoning all over the place. You're going back in time. This is so cool. So your opponent is starting at 1, you're starting at 6, then they're going to go to 2, you're going to go to 5, they're going to go to 3, you're going to go to 4, and et cetera, until the last turn on turn 6, you're only going to have 1 energy to spare. 1 energy. and your opponent's going to have 6. And that's the most crucial moments because they're probably snapping on you if they made it to that point. And you like, do you just be confident in your early plays? Maybe this is the worst card for cube totals because your opponents just leave at the beginning if they see this. Or they think they can weather the storm, get through it, and then those later turns pull off their combos to beat whatever you got. Because here's the thing, because you're investing all of your power, all of your big, we rely so heavily on turn 6 and Marvel Snap. That's the big swings, but you're showing that early, your opponent can react and counter it. It'd be a lot easier to Enchantress things, right? If you see them on the board for the last like 3-4 turns, you can just wait to do it later. The only other thing is on reveals get a huge buff because Cosmo ain't coming out anytime soon. So maybe this is the nerf to Cosmo that we need, is just have 6 energy on turn 1. But another insane utility for Agatha. Oh my gosh, dude, this has to be like the best Agatha deck ever. I think if you have a He Who Remains deck, you would have Agatha. All of a sudden, she becomes competitive because she literally would play herself on turn 1 every time. That's 14 power. And she's an additional draw. My understanding is that your opening hand is like +1 because Agatha comes into your hand. So like insane. You get extra draws. You have your resources to play for turns 2 and on. You have 14 power on turn 1. Oh my gosh, it'd just be nuts. And then I thought, okay, well, I'm not going to have a lot of energy near the end. Why don't I flip that with Mr. Negative when I can in turn 2 or 3 or whenever I draw Mr. Negative? Maybe he's just literally the all-in. You just hope that you get Mr. Negative in the opening hand or in the next 2 draws, play him either turn 1, 2, or 3 while you still have that available energy. And then, bam, you negatize your deck so that you can actually play those cards later on and still have a fighting chance to fight whatever your opponent's doing. So anyways, I made this deck right here, New Lands to be Conquered, because this shot, by the way, is like an art version of when Kang is in Loki, the show. I'm actually just watching that right now, so that was really good timing, but very, very cool. I know Kang is coming, he's a Dad Mind card, but that's when it's custom cards, it doesn't matter. You can still use the characters, right? So anyways, regardless, check this deck out. So it's got Agatha. We can play her on turn 1, or maybe we want to do Mr. Negative as soon as possible, but Agatha's going to choose what we do on turn 1 anyways. Professor X, maybe if I have Professor X and Agatha in my hand right off the hop, I'm just going to straight up Professor X the Agatha lane and then protect her. Because that's the only other reason that I have armor there, is because I feel like Shang-Chi is just going to blow Agatha out of the water, and I'm going to have nothing to do with it later on. So we protect her with Professor X or armor. Boom, we've already won a location. We just have to figure out a way to win another one. And we do that with like crazy Storm combos, Iron Man, whatever. Now, another crazy one is Storm. So yeah, if your opponent thinks they can beat you when you got like 6, 5, 4 energy on the first couple turns, they only got a handful of energy, and you storm a location, yeah, that's going to flood and you're going to win it more than likely. But again, you can't just say that this would be totally busted and would win every game, because if your opponent has the counter options later, even if you flooded a location and you got 20 power out there, right? By the end, like, they could still do a crazy White Tiger Odin combo with Wong, which you're not going to stop because you probably don't have Cosmo or any of the resources to actually counter their late game combos, right? So then maybe they still get enough power over there. And then what can you do? You can't do anything. You can't do anything. Shang-Chi, like, all the tech cards are dead in this kind of deck, unless you put them out early, but then there's not too much value in that now, is there? So wow, what a cool card. What a cool mechanic and snap. Now, I get nervous about this kind of thing. It's kind of similar to like the Mr. Negative effect. It's like when there's cards that build their own archetypes, like, are they too powerful? Are they too dominant? Can you choke the design space? I don't know. Doesn't matter. It's a custom card. It's sick, and I think it'd be cool to have in Snap. So let me know what you guys think about these custom cards in the comments below. Jump in the Berryverse Discord. Thank you so much for submitting these creative ideas. You guys are all crushing it, and I appreciate it every single week. The next challenge is locations. I'm stoked to see what you guys come up with. So thank you as always for watching, and I will catch you guys next time.